I was wondering how you were liking it.
Well,
What's going on, guys?
What's going on?
We're live. What's happening?
We're live. I got a special guest with us. Jerry's been on the Crappie Connection with me and today's bite a couple times. And, you know, I was talking to Dustin earlier this week, and this subject kind of come up. And it goes back to even when I was over at Grand in Oklahoma with Dustin, is fishing, you know, deep vertically. I think it's a subject that I'm not that keen on. So I called my buddy over in Lake Fork there, Jerry, and got him on here to kind of help us out with this subject. I know he's a expert and very versatile angler as well, but I know when I think of deep water crappie, I definitely think of Jerry Hancock, and definitely appreciate you coming on here tonight and helping us out. And
Brad called and said, "Man, who's the? I got an idea for the vertical or straight up down fishing." He said, we both thought at the same time, Jerry Hancock.
I appreciate it. I won't call myself an expert, but I do a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, most experts don't call themselves an expert.
Where you guys at? I can tell Jerry's what's going on over in Jerry's neck of the woods, and we'll hear Dustin's too.
I got a good story. I'm
sitting in Lake Fork in my RV, battling a massive toothache. Like I told these guys, went in this morning to the dentist. I've got to go Thursday after my trip and get a tooth pulled. So I'm sitting in here looking out the window at my boat. I'm going to get to fish tomorrow and Thursday. It's been a little bit slow over here, but been on vacation. And but I'm sitting here at Fork, nice and cool today. Been a good day to be fishing.
Oh, right. Yeah, it always happens. Like tomorrow's probably windy.
Yeah, probably will be.
No, I'm actually at Big Cedar Lodge in Branson going golfing tomorrow at Paynes Valley. So come up here for my brother's bachelor party wedding. And so that's what we're doing tomorrow. So we was running up here to get to this cabin as fast as we could to make the 7 o'clock live, and was running real thin on time. So I said, heck with it, kicked him out of the truck. I'm sitting in the parking lot. They're standing out here at the truck writing signs and trying to make me laugh while I'm on this live. Meanwhile, oh yeah, doing all kinds of stuff. So, yep, well, that's what I'm doing, and made it by a nick of time. I'm here, so can't complain.
We definitely appreciate Jerry coming on here tonight, and Dustin busting his tail to get on here as well. You know, we try to be on here every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, as much as possible, and come up with some different things. And like I said, this subject line that I don't do a whole lot of, because most of the time whenever I'm fishing, I'm trying to stay back away from these fish a little bit. But really over in Grand Lake, the key to that pattern was fishing vertically more than anything else. And I even talked to Jerry today, and I think he's got a pretty cool pattern going over there that, as far as vertical fishing comes to mind, it's a deal that I think all anglers, especially when it comes to crappie fishing, can overlook and really make sure that you know what's going on when you need to switch up things when it comes to vertically jigging. And hopefully you guys can get in on some tips for them and setups. And, you know, like I said, I want to start out with today's fishing reports. Undreftly for me, I am still boatless at this moment. My boat's in. It is not funny. West Memphis getting a new motor, getting a new Suzuki. I'm copying Jerry Hancock and getting a Suzuki on my boat. I've been looking forward to this. Thought this would be a good time of the year to do it whenever it's hot. Should be back in action hopefully by next week at this time for sure. Definitely looking forward to getting a new Suzuki on my boat. But like I said, guys, I'm going to have to rely on y'all's today's bite fish reports. Oh, Jerry just got lost for a second.
You can't rely on Jerry.
So it's up to Dustin.
Hey, soon as you called on Jerry, he said, I'm out.
He's coming back.
Good. But no, I'll start with mine then. It's kind of the same story at Grand Lake. We're still catching fish deep. No thermocline. I don't know what in the world's going on with Grand right now compared to last year. I've been getting, I always look back at my history of how I fished last year compared to this year. And it's a total 360. We was fishing 10 to 12 foot right now and catching our bigger fish off the bottom, 10 to 12 foot deep, vertical fishing. And now when at this time of year, the fish were super aggressive last year too. You could catch a limit so fast it was ridiculous. Super healthy big fish, and now it's a whole different type of fish. And it's like the year completely changed. The spring wasn't the same, and definitely the summer isn't the same as it usually was. But we're still catching them deep, 25 to 30 foot down, and the fish are really finicky and not near as healthy as they usually are, but we still have tons of bait fish around. So it doesn't make a ton of sense. Like I said, it's been a super weird year, but being able to, like you were talking about, Jerry, being able to just kind of keep your head on a swivel and do things different every day will keep you on fish. But it's far from easy. You might find a school of 100 fish on a brush pile, and if you catch 10 of them, you did something. You got to keep moving. So
yeah,
we got you back, Gary.
All right, I lost you for a minute. I don't know what happened, but I'm back. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I see what them crappie feel like now.
Yeah. No, Forks it's been really good. It's hot. The water temps are real high. I'm actually seeing a thermocline set in about 20 foot on I fish kind of the northwest arm of the lake, 20, 24 to 30 foot water typically is the area I like to concentrate on this time of year. And I'm seeing a thermocline about 20 foot deep, which is a little bit odd, but water temps has been up. I've seen it as high as 88, but most days 86, 87. When it gets above 85, I typically, I hate using minnows. Nobody gets a minnow sponsor. We all got some bait sponsors, and I hate using minnows, but running guide trips and trying to get people on fish and get them caught before it gets too hot. This time of year, you just got to buy minnows sometimes. And we've been running a lot of minnows, with the thermocline setting in at 20, which is a little bit odd. Usually we got enough wind. It's not hot enough. I don't see a thermocline up there. I'm catching my fish a little bit shallower than normal, 12 to 18 foot deep. So I'd say 16's the sweet spot. And it's been good fishing. I can't complain. Lake Fork's been low for a couple of years, and it's back up normal. And these fish have scattered a little bit. Do what?
I said that's good to hear. Lake Fork's coming back.
Yeah. No, it was low. They drew it down to work on the dam and all that. We got enough water here to get it back up. It's only, I haven't looked. I'm going to say we're within a foot of being normal, which for this time of year, it's generally about 2.5 foot low. So we're a little above normal of where we are this time of year. But, crappie are a little bit finicky. You can catch them on jigs if your presentation's really good, but they just, with customers, a lot of times we just, I don't want to get them. I want to try to get them caught by noon before we get too hot, and get off the water. So I am running minutes.
Get out of hand.
Yeah, but fishing's been good. I'm watching all the other guys, Jordan and Dylan and everybody I'm seeing, they're catching them every day. It's slow for guides this time of year. This is a slow month of year, but it's kind of sad because there's not a lot of people on the water and the fishing's really good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I always preach that.
Go back to this same thing. And like I said, Jerry and I talked this afternoon even about this. And I always talk about having that right presentation is such a key in summertime and all the year round, really. But key months for me to have a really good presentation is whenever it's really hot and really cold.
Yep.
These fish make you work for every bite. And what I mean by that is they don't forgive you. They just won't bite. You got to have that right presentation. And I want Jerry to kind of go through what is the right presentation in your mind right now on Lake Fork to catch fish with jigs, let's say.
When we start out, say if I start at 7 o'clock in the morning, I tell my guys it's anything we catch before 9:30 is a bonus, and because sun's not up,
like
those fish are out roaming a little more. They're chasing bait. There's bait everywhere. Yeah. I don't care if you go to 5 foot of water or 55 foot of water. There's bait. That whole find the bait, find the fish deal. I've never been one, especially since LiveScope, to buy into that. There's bait everywhere. Yep. So these fish will get out. They're roaming a little bit more. And I will say this: I'm a big fan. I tell people all the time on fork, especially with all the timber fork has. There's really two patterns that I jump on. One is the creek channel. The other one is the edges. And when I say edges, it can be edge of boat lane, it can be edge of open fields, just where there's an opening. Because at night, those fish will chase them shad out in that open field and chase shad all night. And then when they first pull up in the mornings, the first stuff they pull up to is the edge of that timber there. They're just like we are, you guys. I know. Uh, y'all fish fork, you're getting timber and you're running around the boat and you're running into stumps everywhere you go. Can you imagine being a crappie chasing bait in the dark and you got trees everywhere? So it's a lot easier to get out there in open water and chase bait. And that's what they do. So I'll concentrate on that, and early, the bite is better if you can get it on a fish, get it close to a fish. But once about 9:30, the bite actually slows down. The fish aren't as aggressive. I'm not going to say it slows down. They're not as aggressive, but they actually will pull up on that timber and start holding still so we can actually get a bait on them. And that's what I really like to do, with customers.
That's when your presentation comes in handy there.
And now you've got to be a little more precise with your presentation. And not every fish reacts the same, but I know when the water temp gets as high as it is right now, these fish are just not going to chase a bait as far. It's all about presentation, even with minnows. Minnows help. I say minnows mask some sloppiness in presentation. That's all they do. They allow you to be a little sloppier with your presentation, but you can't just drop it down there and hold it right in front of their nose and expect every one of them to bite. There are a few different presentations, and not every fish acts the same. So I go off a percentage thing. Like I love to drop it to a fish as soon as the react start taking it away, and you can do that all day right now, and they will chase it, and they'll chase it all the way to the top of the water, but they won't bite it. So what I tell customers is we don't want to take it away from them, but we don't want to put it on their nose. What I like to have people do is put it down there about 1.5 foot, and I use grids on my LiveScope. One reason, because they can see this difference, how far it is. When I'm fishing on I got 2x2 squares on my graph. I want that bait just a little bit below that 2 foot from them, and I want you to just hold it still and shake it. Shake it, shake it, shake it. When that fish makes his move, just be still, let him bite it. Mm-hmm. If he floats up to it, he's not going to bite it. If he shoots up to it, he's going to smoke it. So you can almost tell by the way that fish turns and when he reacts. As soon as he turns on it, if he just kind of floats towards it, more than likely that fish isn't going to bite it. You can lift it, he'll chase it, but I'll just say, pick it up, let's go to the next one. If he wants, he's going to turn around, he's going to smoke it. But I've got to keep the bait a little bit away from him and do a lot of shaking. And I was telling Brad earlier, when I say shake it, I'll tell him, look, shake it. I don't want it bouncing. I just want it shaking. And that's
like a
vibration, And that's hard to do if you haven't done it.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, I'll have them shake it, and they're shaking, and I'm like, I'll reach over and grab the rod, and I'll do and that fish will smoke it. And I'm like, that's the shake. And once the customer can get that shake down, and then it's pretty good, we can catch a lot of these fish. But
see, that's crazy you say that. In Kansas, we have a lake with a lot of standing timber, and I'll stand behind them sometimes and hit the butt of their rod with my hand like that, and tap it real fast, and usually tell them when to get it, because that shake, that little violent vibration will get them. But if it's got to be the right shake.
It's got to be the right shake.
For me, I'll tap it with my trigger finger, my index finger, and I'll just keep just tapping that pole, tap, and it makes that kind of bait quiver in my mind. I don't know what it does as far as actually seeing it that closely, but
it vibrates fast.
They don't like it. They don't like it for some reason. They don't like it, whatever it is, And once you can get that, you feel that and see how they react. Then, if you can do that, that's kind of my presentation right now. Or I was telling Brad, I'm not a caster. That's not my go-to. Now I can do it, but I've been taking a 1/8 ounce jig head, just a plain jig head, sticking a hook through I stick it in a minnows mouth, come out the top of his back, kind of worming him on there. And I'm pitching that out there past them and let it float right above them. And then I'll just have them lift the rod tip and then just let her kind of flutter down to them. And then as soon as they react, just have them slowly lift up a little. We're catching a lot of fish doing that. But that depends on the tree they're sitting on. You know, if they're in a boat arc tree with a bunch of limbs, we can't do that. So, unfortunately, on Lake Fork, majority of the fish this time of year are set up in boat arc trees. So if I can catch fish that are on slick trees, those fish are going to be spooky. So I'll try to stay off of them. So there's kind of two different presentations that are really working for me, but it depends on the tree. And it also depends on the customer too, because I don't like to cast for them and then hand them the rod. I try to show it to them and let them try to do it, but sometimes it might take 5 or 6 pitches for them to get it close enough to get a reaction.
Yes.
At that point, we could have just dropped straight down on them and caught them. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
So the pitching part of it works, but you're limited to what structure you can, how you can fish it.
Right. Pole timber is the best for that.
Yeah, it is. And we've got a lot of pole timber, but the more fish are in bushier boat arc trees and stuff.
Okay.
So I typically don't do as much pitching and casting as a lot of people do, just because a lot of the structures are set on,
Right.
And most of the fish this time of year, my rule of thumb is like length of rods. I want to get by with the shortest rod I can get away with customers. If like my rod's 11.5 footer that I've designed from May till about February, that rod, that length on fork, 11.5 foot is plenty long enough to stay off of them enough to get on these fish and not be so much rod that people have to get tired of a rod or fight a long rod. And that rod works really good. Right now I'm fishing either 11.5 footer or pitching with an 8 foot rod. But, we don't have to fish with a 13 or a 14, 15 time of year on Lake Fork. Those fish they're not that spooky.
Yeah.
That's always good.
What's your actual setup? Well, you got a 1/8 on. Is that what I heard you say? And what actually, are you putting a weight above it or anything else?
Well, yeah, I do. And this may sound stupid, and I don't know. I'm running a 1/2 ounce tungsten weight above an 1/8 ounce jig head most of the time. That's my setup right now.
Why tungsten?
For the size of it, it's just, the size of the weight, it's so much heavier. It gets down there so much faster. I used to run a 3/16 ounce lead, a bullet weight above them.
Yeah.
Then an 1/8 ounce, and that works. But that 1/2 ounce gets on them quick. I mean, real fast.
Yeah.
And with an 1/8 ounce jig head below it, it doesn't fall so fast that stays tangled up all the time. Because I use straight braid. I don't use a fluorocarbon, a leader, or anything like that. If I have to push that bait, which with customers, a lot of times they drop short and I end up having to drive that bait towards them fish, that 1/2 ounce weight pushes a lot better than something lighter to get it on them quicker. It's all about trying to, I tell my guys, look, when your bait hits the water, count to 5. That's how I want that fish caught. So I want to try to get that bait to them as fast as possible. And using that 1/2 ounce weight, if I use a 1/2 ounce bullet weight, that sucker's so long, it probably makes no difference. It just, to me, I don't like the looks of it. It's a
confidence thing. Yeah. I agree with it. I also think with that lead, it being so long, it attracts the fish a little bit more.
Yeah.
On that lead, the lead look almost looks just like a shad color, and you'll have fish hit that lead sometimes before you can get them to see the bait because it's so big and shining just like a shad does. They will hit that lead a lot. So that tungsten
setup you're using here right now, typically, I know it already, but I want everybody at home to.
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing, just a little bit smaller version. If I'm going to drop, we're 20 to 25 foot deep, but I'll put a number 4 split shot above a 24th to 16th, same exact story. So the 24th with an itty bit is a killer too, but the split shot, just because we're using 6-pound line with the 7-foot dingoes, and we're dropping on brush straight down. But if I'm going long rod, which I do a lot in trophy fishing and chasing the single fish or just big fish on timber, I'll use like the 13, 14 footer, the flip stick, and I'll put a heavy weight on it, like a 1/2 ounce above it, and then a 16th on it. Or the same exact scenario you said, a 16th. If it's not windy, I will just do a 16th. If that water's really calm, a 16th ounce jig is hard to beat. That natural fall, swinging by them with no weight on top. It seems like if I can ever get without a weight on top, I'm always going to do that, because I get more bites with just the jig head. But 9 times out of 10, you can't get out there with no wind. So I'm dropping a weight above it. But same exact kind of scenario. But on the brush, we'll drop down and stop at about a foot or 2 above that brush, and we'll kind of start taking it away before anybody sees it. And then by the time they see it, you're so far away, I feel like they have to run a long ways to get to it. And just like you said, if they're sprinting up to it, I tell them don't stop the reel, and it's such an aggressive reel, you almost feel like you're taking it away from them so strong that they're not going to bite it. And it's hard to get clients to reel it away from the fish. Watching it on the screen, I struggle with that. Oh, I struggle with that so bad.
You know what
because
you do?
like, as soon as you stop, it's over. So you got to keep reeling them, begging them, don't stop, because they'll usually hit it on that rise.
You know what you do? You take your hand and throw it over the graph.
Oh, yeah.
I do it all the time. I tell them, when we start lifting, you can't stop. If you stop, it's over. He's not going to bite it. And they will lift, and that fish is almost there, and they stop. And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
Stop.
Or they'll yank before they feel it. You ever have them do that?
I just cover the graph with my hand and say, when I say lift, you start watching the tip of your rod, and I want the same motion all the way up. And when that rod starts bending, you just keep lifting. Don't jerk. I'll cover the graph up so they can't see it. They'll usually laugh the first time, but then they don't why I'm doing it. It's because they see that fish coming, they stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean,
that fish will
slow down.
goes right back down. Not 99.9% when that fish is chasing it and they stop their bait, that fish is just going to nose and go back down.
Or they'll almost stop it, or they'll slow it down a whole lot.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, one of my number 2 biggest thing is when them fish get so close to the bait, they already feel it before it happens. They think it bit it, they jerk it. And it's like, oh, man, you were 2 seconds away from catching that fish, but you thought you felt it. A lot of my best clients will be they'll never even look at the screen, never even pay attention to it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm walking out here to unhook my boat charger or plug it up, if y'all don't mind.
Yeah,
I just thought I need to charge a battery.
Welcome to the guide life. Hey, usually I figure that out about 2 a.m. when I'm laying in bed.
Well, I just thought of that. I hadn't charged my LiveScope battery since I fished with it last, and I was sitting there when you said that. I'm like, it's probably good with a 100-amp battery, but my luck will go dead halfway through the trip.
For sure.
I got a question from Buck Anderson on YouTube. He's asking, how do you usually find on the lake that you're not familiar with standing timber? Where is it most likely located on a new lake? If you're going there, where would you actually go look for standing timber on a new lake?
That'd be a solid Jerry question, but I've got a couple theories with it.
Well, I mean, first of all, I would do like we've always done. I mean, I would try to find out with a map there is standing timber on that lake. Say there is standing timber. Here's been my theory, and it doesn't matter. The only time that this may not matter would be dead of winter, but most times far north. And when I say north, that could be misleading because depending on lake, as far away from the dam as I can get and stay in deep enough water, that's where I'm going to start looking. And if you don't know anything, get out on creek channels and find your creek channels. Generally, there's going to be timber in your secondary creek channels. I mean, nowadays with the technology we've got, there's no excuse. Used to, we had to look at a paper map. And we would have to guesstimate a little bit, line up some points and stuff like that, but now you can see right where you are with your maps. And I love creek channels. I do love creek channels, but like I can tell you right now on Lake Fork, the flats just adjacent to the creek channels is where it's at most of the time this time of year. But if I had to get anywhere to find some big timber, it's going to be on creek channels. And then I may start working off of that. You know, with LiveScope, we can see now so much better. If they're not on the creek channel, you can get off on the flat side of it, and find some timber. And if you're seeing more fish there in a certain depth, then that gives you an indication, well, I need to start looking over here. Points, edges. Exactly. I mean, I treat crappie like I do deer in a sense. I like edges of stuff. I like funnels, secondary creek channels, you know, and and once again, I don't think there is anything set in stone. Now, especially with LiveScope, it's even more. There nothing set in stone anymore. I mean, there's people catch fish in places that we probably would have never looked before.
Right.
But,
and some lakes, it don't matter. Some lakes really just don't hold any standing timber. I mean, Grand Lake, you will not find. I mean, there's some, but you will not find standing timber in that lake.
No,
so,
it has to be a lake. It's got to have timber.
It has to have standing. I've even been on lakes where the map says flooded timber and standing timber, and there's no standing timber there. So a lot of times it's just you got to find it, and then if you find it on a lake, usually you can find it elsewhere on that lake too. It's usually not just one patch of standing timber. That lake will hold standing timber throughout the lake. Kind of the same story. And not a lot of places will have standing timber like the pole timber we're talking about without seeing some, just with the naked eye. I mean, when you're boating by, you might see a little stump sticking up, but under that stump's a bed of thousands of pole timber, you know, unless the lake's flooded, especially this time of year in the summer when lakes are down a little bit or the dead of winter. You'll see a few of those stumps sticking up, and you go over there and you figure out that it's 200-yard long deal of standing timber. So naked eye will find it too sometimes.
Yeah, you know, it kind of comes back, even like Jerry was saying, most of these maps, regardless if it's a paper map or on your electronics, even these phones, they'll shade out these areas and say standing timber.
Exactly.
That's the first thing I'm going to do whenever I go to a body of water that I'm not familiar with. I'm going to look at a map and see if it actually says, hey, standing timber, you know, that's a dead giveaway. That's a spot that more than likely is going to have that timber in there. And then goes back to even what Jerry and everybody was saying here is I'm going to look for creeks and I'm going to look for any kind of river system that was there before they flooded that impoundment. And if you think about it, whenever they're making these lakes and they're forming them, the areas that they can't really take bulldozers and really create a flatness is at those ledges of these rivers and such. More likely, that's the spots that they're going to leave them there because they're already there. They're going to be so deep underwater. So for me, in my experience, I'm always going to look for any kind of streams, creeks, rivers, however you might say it, that could possibly still be holding timber from whenever they impounded it. I know, like Barnett, it was made back in the 1950s. It's a pretty old gal right now, but all those rivers that I would say from mid-lake back north, away from the dam, still has thousands of stumps there submerged underwater. That's not going to go anywhere. That's, you know, lasting, I don't know how long they'll last, for hundreds of years, I'm assuming.
Right.
You know, they're not rotting away. They're submerged. They're protected in that water system. But that's how I always look at a map, is look for these river systems that was there before they made these lakes or these creek channels. And usually if things look right on the map, more than likely it's going to look right once you get out there. It's kind of like when we went to Grand Lake, or I went to Grand Lake, you know, some of the areas that I look for, I'd say, man, that area there just makes sense. And I would go there, and more likely, hats off to a lot of you guys over at Grand Lake, people had brush piles there. It made sense to have brush piles there. It was a great point, or a, you know, deep water transition to some shallow humps, and I would go check and say, if I was here, I would make a brush pile there, and then go check them. and then it would be there. And you're like, man, it just makes sense no matter really where you go. If you can just take a little bit of pre-work before you get on the water, because if you're like me and 99% of the other fishermen I'm too, once you get on the water, my brain is automatically thinking, let's catch fish. Let's catch fish. I'm not going to really want to, tournament fishing is different, of course, but whenever I go to a nobody lake, I want to start catching fish as fast as I can.
That's what I struggle with. Same exact thing.
You just want to get going.
A first stop. I want fish the first stop.
Yeah. I want to hit that spot as quick as I can, but usually if I have in mind before I get to a body of water and say, all right, I'm going to check this spot, this spot, this spot, it makes sense for either structure to be left there for whenever it was formed, or even people putting structure there. Right. We all kind of think alike when it comes about placing structure. You want deep water and you want shallow water, and you want some kind of ledge or some kind of point that would, like Jerry said earlier, funnel fish or push them to a particular area.
Well,
guys, we all feel like we do brush.
A lot of guys set brush piles. We go to these tournaments and fish. If you got something blocked by south wind, what's the predominant wind? Southeast or southwest. These old timers and these guys are going to drop a brush pile somewhere that's got a point coming out on the inside where a south wind's going to block that.
No, that's a fact.
They're not necessarily going to set it on the south side of it where
you're giving the good secrets here. He's giving the good beans.
Well, you go back. I'm going to age myself. 20 years ago, we go to these tournaments and go to a lake, and there's no LiveScope. There's no side imaging. We were using black and white 2D graphs. And we got to go figure out where we're going to catch some fish. And my partner, Paul O'Beer, is one of the best in the world. He could drive down a bank and he'd be looking up on the bank and he'd say, there's a water tower over there. And he'd look across the lake and say, well, there's a point over there with another water tower. And he'd say, there's a south bank here. We've got there ought to be a brush pile right here. We'd drive around and, starting 12 foot, work our way out to 20, and sure enough, there'd be a brush pile on the inside of that point. Or you don't watch up on the bank, you'd say, hey, look, there's a tree cut down.
Yeah.
There's a brush pile close. He didn't drag it across. He didn't drag that brush 2 miles.
Right.
He drug it down here and dropped it. Used to you had to do a lot more of that type of stuff. Now with side imaging, you can run that thing out at 100 foot and go down a bank, and you're going to find it in the first pass, but you get to know like the what holds fish. I always go back to my home lake. Like if I'm going to, doesn't matter what lake it is, even say Grand Lake, whatever, and it's May, and what am I doing on my home lake? It doesn't matter if your home lake's in Texas or it's Missouri or it's in Kansas or Minnesota. What depth of water am I looking at? And then I go, okay, well, I'm south of him. He's a little behind my fish, or he's a little ahead of my fish because I live way north of him. And we're catching them in this. My fish are just now spawning. If I go way south, them fish are probably post-spawn fish, so they're a little deeper. It gives you that little idea of where to start. And you have to adjust off of that.
Another thing that I remember years ago, and I guess it was whenever Jerry won the Crappie Expo, how deep were you fishing then, Jerry? And I know the answer already, but I want everybody that's not familiar with that podcast when we went into those details about you fishing deep, and I want to kind of go back to even that.
Most of our fish we were catching were 30 to 40 foot deep. Now,
and you were pretty much fishing straight vertical.
Off the water, the fish were that deep.
Yeah.
Now some of the water was say 35 foot, and some of it was 60 foot water. It just depends. But I would say the average depth for most of them was 30 foot deep, probably in that tournament.
Ain't that crazy?
Somebody that's new to LiveScope, whenever they're fishing that deep, and whether they got the 32 or the 34. And a common mistake I think people believe, and I hope I can jog your memory on what we even discussed during that podcast. I remember you saying that you would drop it down and literally you'd see the first 10 feet and then all of a sudden it would disappear. I want you to kind of go back through that whole thought process and why you know where I'm going.
I know where you're going. What it all has to do with the 8-degree angle on our if you have a LiveScope, let's go with Garmin. It's got that 8-degree kick out on your transducer, so it doesn't hit the motor. This is if it's on the motor. Now, if you got it on a pole with a 0 degree, it's not going to be as critical. But
do you still have an 8-degree, Jerry?
I still have an 8-degree. Mine's on the left. Mine's on the left side of my trolling motor because I'm left-handed.
Gotcha.
My customers doesn't matter to them. They're not, Do
they stand on your left?
I would, if we're fishing deep, I prefer them on my left. Yes,
gotcha.
It makes it a lot easier because they're fishing left. If they're on the right, they got to fish across everything.
Right.
Cross the grass, cross everything. But if we're fishing like right now, as shallow as we're fishing, it's not a big deal. I can get them adjusted. But so it's a stair step deal. You're not with that 8-degree kick out. Let's say you're fishing 15 foot or less. You can kind of go right in front of the trolling motor and you're going to be close. But when you get, say, to 20, you got to go a little bit left. If you're 30, you got to go another few feet. You got to learn that stair step. And when you get really critical with it, if I got old big boy on the left side of my boat and my boat's leaning a little more to the left, now my 8-degree angle is not 8 degrees no more. It might be 4. So my left ain't quite as far.
Gotcha.
I got 2 tanks on my boat, so I keep a lot of gas on the right side of it more than the left side, so my boat's not tilting. And you got to take that into account. I can feel it. I can feel the lean, and when they drop it, I can see, and I tell them. But you just got to, when you're fishing 30 or 40 foot deep, all you do, it's simple to find your bait. Everybody says, I lose my bait. Well, when you drop your bait down, I don't care if you want to drop it right in front of the motor or left or right, whatever it is. Whenever you lose your bait, you just turn your motor and find your bait. My bait's right. My fish is left. What does that mean? You've got to go left with your bait.
Exactly.
It's like adjusting an arrow, like adjusting on a bow.
Yep.
If you want your impact to go left, you've got to take your rest to your sight to the left. It's the same type of deal. And so you just got to get used to that. And the deeper you fish, what happens is that cone spreads out a little bit more. And what I start doing is I start fanning my motor real fast. And when I start seeing that bait and fish, I tell them drag it till I start seeing that separation getting really, really close. And then I know they're getting in there tight on it. And then, because if you move that bait and you see that bait on your graph swing a lot, that means you're not very close. But when you turn that graph and that bait and that fish still stay pretty tight together, then you're getting close to it. And there's no shortcut to learning it. Now I know a lot of guys are running 0 degrees on their trolling motors.
Yeah.
And call me hard-headed, old-fashioned, whatever.
I was going to do it.
I'm about 2 years behind most of you young tournament guys on all this stuff, and that would take some of that out. But here's something else. I don't want my transducer sticking way off my shaft on fork as many trees there are, because I'm going to break it a lot.
Too. That's a good
So
point.
I like it on there. My customers, it doesn't matter to them because I'm going to have to tell them left anyway. So it's only going to affect me more. Makes my job a little harder, but I also tear up a lot less stuff keeping my transducer up against my shaft.
And once you're so used to it, it really doesn't make a huge factor.
It doesn't matter because I know I can tell them I want drop it right there. And if I'm fishing 30 foot deep and I see your bait falling on my graph above 15 foot, you're nowhere close to that fish.
Exactly.
And that's what I have customers all the time. I'll say, drop it. And they'll stop. I don't see my bait. Was because you hadn't got your bait down there to see it.
Yeah.
I don't care if you see it at 8 foot. I want to see it down there at 20 foot where the fish is.
And that's another thing with heavy weights. If you are off a little bit by the time you get down there, moving it 2 or 3 feet. Yeah, you can drag it real quick through that water, and then you can kind of
going back to what you said. If I was fishing by myself, and it wasn't windy, I'd probably use a 16th or 1/8 ounce jig alone by itself, no weight above it. I'd prefer to fish that way. But with customers and pushing baits as much as we have to drive baits,
for sure.
You need to learn it.
weight, it's just a lot more efficient, and
Yeah.
it makes it easier on them. You know?
Yeah.
So.
That bite is a lot more dramatic too when you take that top weight off. I kind of enjoy that part too.
Well, what sucks this time of year is
it's a pressure.
You don't ever know the fish bit. I'm going to tell them, I said, look, here's how it's going to be. You're probably going to feel about 1 out of 10 fish bite. But if I say get him, I want you to jerk.
Yeah.
And I can tell them that 10 times, and it still ends up like get him.
I always say,
jerk.
Eventually, we're gonna earn that trust eventually. But please just yank, because then what will happen too? You'll say, okay, go ahead and set the hook. They won't set the hook, say yank, and then by the 4th time they'll yank and say he wasn't there. I'll say he was there 4 yanks ago.
4 times ago, yeah.
He was there 4 yanks ago.
I know. I mean, and me and Kel Ward talk almost every day. We talk about this very thing, and we laugh, and it's kind of like, what do we do to fix that? It's to make it easier on the customers. I'm like, I've tried everything, and it's a trust thing with them, and some people listen, and I don't know.
Usually the wives are the listeners.
Give me a female and from 13 up, and they're going to outfish every male in the boat.
That's so funny.
But that goes back before LiveScope. That goes way back before we.
Really?
Oh yeah. You give me the wife for a 13-year-old girl. A 13-year-old girl. I'm seriously, if I could get a 13-year-old fish tournaments with me, she'd probably outfish Hayden. I mean, it's they listen. They feel better. They move slower. They're not herky-jerky with all their movements. And I've said that for years. I'd rather have we used to spider rig. Man, I'd set a little 13-year-old girl up front with us, and she would wear some fish out. You know, and I could get her 14-year-old brother up there, and he don't want to listen to me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
You know, it kind of goes back, and I want to touch back on this subject, and then I want to read some today's bite reports from everybody that I've got a bunch of them out there already. But, you know, we're talking about the standard 8-degree mount that comes on your, especially the 32. You know, as you're going away from the transducer, the 8 degrees kicking at an angle. It's not going directly down. And that's what Jerry was saying a minute ago. Instead of it dropping down, your bait's dropping directly down, but the actual beam is cutting to the side a little bit. So as you go 25, 30 feet down, as you drop down, you're not seeing directly below you at that point. You're actually seeing 8 degrees to the left. So you're going to have to actually move your pole instead of directly down off the trolling motor. You might have to kick it 2 to 3 feet to the left to actually show it into the picture. That's really the whole mindset thing is your mind's telling you, all right, I need to drop it directly in front of this trolling motor. Yeah, I can see it the first 10, 12 feet. Then all of a sudden it disappears. It's because of that cone angle, that 8 degrees actually kicking at an angle. So if you're fishing here straight below it, you're not seeing it on the screen anymore. So you'll have to move it to the left to actually get it in that 8-degree picture. Because it's actually cut the slice sideways.
Depending on which side of the shaft, you know, I tell people, if you're right-handed, you want your transducer on the right side of your trolling motor.
Exactly.
Because the deeper you go, naturally, that's what it allows you to fish straight in front of you and not across your body.
And have you ever noticed naturally if they're right or left-handed when you go for a fish, they start floating that way anyway, like their rod kind of starts just taking off over there?
When you were talking earlier about people, do you want them on the left side? I do want them on the left side if they will stand square to the front of the boat. But what they end up doing is they turn their body to the right to look at the graph, and the rod tends
follows
to go
their eyes.
The right.
Yes,
the rod always goes to the right. But so if I put them on the right side, now they turn their body to the left, and the rod goes to the left, which is where it needs to go.
That's a good point.
So what I do is I'll throw them up there, and when I see them doing that, sometimes I'll swap them out. Sometimes this guy's going to be better on the right side than he is the left side. It's just how he tends to stand and how his body, how his rod, as he starts dropping his rod, instead of going straight down, it's going right the whole time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as the guy, and being a guide, I'm not trying to toot our own horn, but we see, we're not only watching the graph, we're watching you, your rod angle, the wind. We know how the boat's drifting. We're processing all this information at the same time when all you're doing is listening, you know.
Right.
So there's sometimes we have to, if you'll pick up and say, all right, hey, if you'll stand on the right side, you're going to do better. By the way you're standing, the way your body is doing, the way you're dropping this rod, if you'll move over here, it's going to make life easier on you.
Right.
You know, and
all of us.
Like my clients here, my ideal setup is have a left-handed client and a right-handed client. Now, I have a right-handed client, I'm going to put him on the left side of the boat. Yep. And if they're left-handed, I'm going to put them on the right side of the boat. That way it kind of centers them up directly with that shaft a little better. So actually my ideal setup is have a lefty and a righty in my boat, and then I switch them around. That way I swap them around. That way they can be pretty much vertically straight ahead of that motor.
What happens is clients, because my boat, I'm sitting in the middle, I got one on each side sitting on the butt seat, and they'll say, well, I'm left-handed, I want to sit on the left, because that gets the rod away from me personally. Yeah. Gives them more room, they feel like. But what they end up doing is they turn their body back to me, and they're always fishing to the right. So it's exactly what Brad's saying, you know.
Then you got them guys up there sword fighting.
Yeah, yeah, you know. So I don't know, man. Nothing's easy about LiveScope and single fish on timber. It's the hardest.
Especially Roman fish, same thing.
Oh, you know, after 20-something years of guiding, I'm like, man, we're doing it the hard way now. You know, it was so much easier when I could throw a buoy out and say, hey, drop it 2 pulls right here on this side of that buoy and catch it, you know. It's a lot tougher. It just takes a lot more work from the guide standpoint to you know, understand all this stuff. Yeah. Pick all this stuff. Our customers, bless their hearts, a lot of them don't know. They've never done it before. So
it ain't their fault.
They're a baby bird. They're relying on us for everything. You know, now after they go with you a few times, they start understanding, or if they have LiveScope. And when you get a guy like that in the boat, as a guide, you're like, whoa, man, this is going to be a nice, easy day. You know, this guy understands exactly what we're doing, you know. So
another tip I want to tell people along the same lines as I just talked about, as far as putting the right-handed person on the left side of the boat. Me personally, I'm right-handed, so I like to stand on the left side of my trolling motor, or the left side of my boat. Instead of standing straight ahead, I want to be a little bit left. That way my right hand is directly in line with my trolling motor. Same thing, if I was a lefty, I would want to stand on the right side of the boat, so my left hand would be directly in line with that trolling motor as well. So if you're just beginning LiveScope, and that's actually a really good tip that you want to kind of take in mind. Instead of, all right, I'm right-handed, I need to stand on the right side of the boat. Actually, if you're right-handed, you need to be on the left side of the boat. And if you're left-handed, you need to be on the right side of the boat. It sounds very minute, but it actually can help you keep you in that beam easier or better or what have you. And it just speed up of what you're seeing on that screen a whole lot more.
No doubt.
Okay, I'll get some messages here about this, I guess, but definitely want to appreciate everybody coming on tonight. I want to recognize a few people: Charles Henderson, Jonathan, Clay Blair, Slick. Man, I love the comment that Slick made. You look back on the comments, I agree with him. If you like what we're doing tonight, make sure you go ahead and hit that thumbs up, especially you guys on YouTube. We need those thumbs up to keep this party going. Special thanks to Bobby Girl and Bass for providing us to do this every week. I know Dustin and I, look at him. He's
yeah. Hey, this is the color of the summer so far.
Color of the summer.
Fried Chat and Sandfly, guys. Them 2 colors right now are killers on that brush. But I was going to show you all that. Those 2 new colors that are at lurenet.com. So think about me when you buy them, but you won't go wrong.
Appreciate you. He's a new guy that's just joining on. Appreciate you coming on board with us, Murdoch. Hopefully we can kind of help you out and keep catching crappie even more throughout the year. August to September, guys, fishing can be really great. It can be really hot. It can be really trying because these fish are going to make you work for them. You got to have the right presentations, like Jerry said numerous times. And what's kind of funny, and I'm sure Dustin's going to agree with me, Jerry has said some of the same things that Dustin and I have said all summer long here.
Oh, man, yeah.
Has it not?
No doubt. Yeah,
like
I feel like someone's going to get a good kick. They're going to think we trained him up before we got on here.
Yeah, it's just you think of guys and we all kind of think the same when it comes to catching these fish.
Right.
Especially, not tooting our horns, but we get to fish a lot. So we're trying to really.
We're all three kind of in the same boat.
You guys out, and as you're watching this show weekly, you're hearing of some of the same things that Dustin has said. I know I have said numerous times, and Jerry's saying tonight.
We had to get somebody that actually knew what they were talking about to tell you guys.
Yeah. We got, guys, definitely, if you're wanting to go to Lake Fork, I cannot recommend this guy enough. He's not only a great fisherman, he's honestly a great human being. I always enjoy my time hanging out with Jerry. I think we met 4 or 5 years ago, and, you got people that you meet, like Dustin and I, we just always click. We think alike.
Oh, yeah.
He's just a great individual. So definitely, if you're going to Lake Fork, I would definitely look up Jerry Hancock. Jerry, what's the best way for some of these guys if they're coming to Lake Fork and get a hold of you?
If you're on Facebook, Jerry Hancock Fishing, or just Jerry Hancock, you can get me. That's probably the easiest way. I mean, I don't know if y'all give phone numbers out, but I'd be glad to give my number to you. It's 214-544-3678. If you got any questions coming to Fort, I don't care if you're fishing with me or not, I'll point you in a direction. And I just want to tell Brad and Dustin that you'd be surprised how many people I get fishing with me or contact me that they've seen podcasts I've done with you guys. I don't know how many times I've been on, but it's been maybe a half a dozen times now we're getting up to. And people say, yeah, hey, man, they'll message me, say, I seen you on Crappie Connection. Cool. So I'm always proud to be on here and kind of.
The thing is with this is if they go on a trip with you off this video, you have to give them a hug. So it's kind of the thing we got going. So you guys give him a good.
You got to give him a hug.
He gives good hugs. Just give him a good one when you see him.
So is that hug still going?
Oh yeah. Oh,
well,
I made my wife hug Brad the last time we seen him because of that. I said, I'm not hugging him. You can hug him.
Good.
I'll take a hug from your wife any day. She's sweet as well.
I appreciate y'all giving me a chance.
You bet, buddy.
I love just being associated with you guys through this stuff, and I wear my Crappie Connection jerseys a lot.
Oh yeah,
fishing with customers and they see it, and so enjoy what you got. I don't get. Sometimes I'm busy. I don't get to watch every episode, but I try to get on and watch and see. So enjoy it. And
thanks for letting us pick your brain. Thanks for letting us pick your brain all night.
Man, anytime.
Now your tooth and brain hurts.
Man, my tooth does hurt. I can't wait till Thursday, and then I hope I feel good enough because I got a 9:00 tee time Friday, so we're gonna play golf Friday.
You better get it figured out then.
Jordan Sanders and Travis Decker. I think Fred Carter and Tornado Tim. They're coming down here. So we've been talking about playing golf together for a while, so we got a tee time.
That'll be a good time.
Yeah, this might be my one chance to beat Jordan Sanders at golf.
I was about to say that. Hey, you take that crown right now. That should be a title. If you win, you got to let us know. Make it known.
I don't know I can beat him fishing anymore. That kid can fish. I mean,
you got it.
He's awesome. But we're going to have a good time.
I'm going to go back and see if I got any questions real quick before we get out of here tonight. I got a few questions. Somebody, Mike Will is asking, what do you guys think of a stick steer style boat as far as crappie fishing?
Man, whatever gets you around that you're comfortable with and enjoy. I don't see nothing wrong with it, other than, depending on what kind of motor, if you're talking a jet motor or not. But
we used to, that old stick steer Kingfisher, and I think Skinner made one back in the day. I fished. My cousin had one. We fished. Man, they were good little fishing boats. Back then, you drop trolling motor on her. We'd just pull up to trees and tie up. They'll beat you to death in rough
That's
water.
what I was about to say. Rough water, they'll beat you to death.
I would say, depending on the style of fishing, if you're wanting a LiveScope crappie or something, no, that's probably not the style of boat you want. But if you want to run up creeks and tie up to trees and stuff like that, there's not a thing in the world wrong with them. Fished a lot of days out of one of them, and some of them were the old bathtub. We call them bathtub style boats.
Yeah.
Kind of how they were.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put on here. I know I had this, even going back to that same question for me. If you're fishing by yourself a lot, one, you don't have to get up and move back and forth from the boat to the back of the boat. You're right there.
That brings up a good point.
Throw down the trolling motor and keep on fishing. So it can be very versatile as well. But if you're fishing by yourself mainly, day in and day out, I think it's a great boat.
I tell you what,
it's not going to get you the big wind and waves like some of the bigger outfits. But if you mainly fish by yourself and you're wanting to fish off the front of the boat, I think a stick steer is a great option.
Yeah, I don't know if he's on here or not, but Crappie Ninja, Joe Pertenza, he used to have a stick steer. I think he may still have one, but he used it for dock shooting. Rascal.
Awesome dock shooting boat.
Yeah, he flies up to those docks with that stick and never gets out of the seat. Shoots the dock, and because it sits real low to the water, he's just level with the water. He'll shoot that dock, start her up, and run to the next one. So those are killer dock shooting boats too.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. I got a Buck Anderson. He's asking me about the crappie connection gear. Buck, you can find, and I got it on the screen right now, you can find all our crappie connection gear, from our hats to the shirts to some stickers on our crappie website. Hey, right there. I like that one.
I've had this one. Brad gave this to me.
Without a hug?
I don't know what.
Without a hug?
I don't know where it was at.
You didn't have to give a hug for that one?
No, I ain't giving him a hug for anything. I let my wife hug him.
Yeah.
You wait till I see you next, Jerry. You're going to get a good one.
Travis, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Shane, Kobe, Evan, I got a question from Evan Berry. We went out fishing with Evan last week for a few minutes, but let me get back to his question here. He's asking about when you mark it with a buoy marker and start fishing with slip bobbers and gars start showing up. Is it feeding time, or is it good time to move whenever you got gars, or what's your opinion on fishing around garfish?
I'm bouncing. They pester the heck out of me. I'm probably rolling. Unless I can see the fish in there thick, I'm rolling.
Gars for me, if you're using live bait, I think you're just you're attracting gars, and they absolutely love minnows. So if I was in an area that had a lot of gars, I would definitely take off the live bait, and then I would use strictly artificial. You still would get gars bite them, but I don't think quite as much as if you have minnows on. It just seems like to me, from fishing a lot of these river oxbow lakes,
and
you know how on there.
Those gar look identical to crappie when they turn straight at that LiveScope. Looks like a nice crappie sitting there.
They can.
And it'll drive me wild, because if you think about it, they're kind of like a tube shape. So when they face it, it's a perfect circle. Looks like a nice crappie sitting there, and then they turn and it's a 5-foot gar.
We battle a lot. But I tell you this, I catch a lot of crappie where I got to drop that bait down and bounce it off that gar to get him to move, and that crappie sitting right under it.
Really?
Big crappie, they don't run off. There's times if I'm not seeing gar, I'm not going to see crappie. They're just in that area. But there are, but like Dustin said, in the spring when we're chasing roaming fish, boy, you scan out there 40, 50 feet. You're like, oh, there's a monster. And you get up there and you drop it, and you're like, I don't know. Then you turn sideways. And you're like, get it out there, get it out, hurry.
Yeah. Fast.
Yeah.
Or they just thump it and they think they got a dandy, and then it just noses straight up. I'm like, oh man.
I tell my guys, they're like, can we catch that gar? I said, you're taking him off if you get him in the boat.
Oh, you grumpy. You need to let him catch him.
The only thing that I've really noticed that will shut down crappie to say is really big stripers. Now, I've seen a school of stripers move in, and I would have crappie sitting on top of a big stump, and it would be 30, 40 crappie sitting there, and all of a sudden I see a school of stripers getting closer to me and start
Gonzo
coming through the screen. And all of a sudden, you look back at the stump that those crappie are on, and you're like, man, they disappeared. They didn't disappear. They hover down deep into that brush pile. That's the only thing that I have really seen that scares crappie.
I've seen that a lot on Texoma. I saw it on Texoma.
Big flatheads will do that to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They'll cruise up on a brush pile or lay down, and them crappie will disappear if a big flathead rolls up there, because they'll eat them. You know.
Yeah.
You know. But used to, I would like that question would have been a big deal. You know, like in the springtime when the fish are shallow and they're on the bank, we're wading and stuff like that. When the gar and the carp start coming in there and start, thrashing, the crappie spawn's usually already done.
Yeah,
that's a good telltale that those fish are done in that area.
That's right.
When those fish start coming in there and making a lot of racket.
Agree to that.
Definitely appreciate both you guys. Dustin, as always, have fun out there. Be safe.
Hey, I will. Yes, sir. I'll be here next Tuesday, 7 o'clock.
Hey, man.
Definitely hope that dude gets better. And make sure you guys hit subscribe.
What do you shoot? What do you shoot, Dustin?
Oh, man. This what do I shoot normally, or what I'm going to shoot tomorrow?
Yeah.
Normally, I'm low to mid 80s. I'm nothing real fancy.
Yeah, you're way ahead of me.
Oh, heck. I can usually play, but this course here is going to be a whole nother ball game. It'd be different.
I'm trying to get better, but
Yeah.
I'm usually one hole away from throwing my clubs off the 515 bridge on the way home every day, and then I'll birdie the last hole.
But one beer away from having a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, no, it's really just a fun sport with the guys. I do about once, twice a week, and it's a blast. I mean, we really enjoy it. So. But hopefully tomorrow's a good round. We'll see.
Well, y'all have fun up there.
All right, guys. Until next time, Brad Chappell here. I got
Dustin.
Gary Hancock.
All right, guys. See y'all next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock.
See you guys.
See you guys.